This is the open source cartridge reader. With it and its adapters, I'm able to back up my entire physical game library, except for the Virtual Boy, since its adapters came as a kit. I didn't realize why that was until I decided to assemble it. And I will say, fighting with 60 0.4mm pins and perfectly soldering them in place was a true test of my patience, and I settled with good enough. But after 4 hours and much swearing, it works! And now I can back up my entire Virtual Boy collection and play it on anything.